Before we dive in, if you've ever felt like your voice was stolen, your ideas claimed by someone else, or your worth overshadowed, this story is for you. Subscribe to our channel and join a community that believes every name, every story, and every stitch of your work deserves to be seen and honored. I woke to the memory of flames. Heat still pulsed in my chest as though the warehouse fire was locked beneath my ribs, trapped and alive. My hands clutched at the sheets, breath rattling, eyes wide and unseeing for a moment, then narrowing, finding the dawn creeping past the window pane like a promise I'd waited too long to claim. My name, silent on my lips, tasted of ash. I swallowed hard and drew a breath that felt like reclaiming the air. I rose slowly, each step across the worn wooden floor deliberate, as if testing the weight of my own resolve. The cold brushed against my ankles and I shivered, not from fear, but from the clarity that had settled in my bones. In the mirror's reflection, my eyes seemed older, sharper. My hair tangled around my shoulders, a dark curtain that hid nothing from the girl who had died in smoke. I will not be erased again. At the small drafting table, I unfurled the battered sketchbook that had survived that life. The lines of the layer-skin silhouettes emerged from memory with aching precision, every angle carved from the years I'd spent dreaming them into life. My pencil moved over the page in sure, steady strokes, fingers trembling only once before I forced them still. These designs were not echoes, they were a vow. Outside, the city still slept beneath the soft haze of dawn. The world turned without caring that it had stolen everything I was. I leaned into the quiet, let it seep into my breath, my pulse, until all that was left was the beat of my heart and the surety of my hands. In the basement of an old office building, dust clung to the concrete walls like the past I refused to let settle. My footsteps echoed in the dim light as I approached the flickering screen of an ancient computer, the kind no one thought to check, the kind that would hide my secrets until I was ready to show them to the world. I typed my name into the digital forms, every keystroke a reclaiming. Trademark applications, copyright claims, silent declarations of ownership. The final click echoed in the hollow room, a soft sound that still felt like thunder in my chest. A faint smile tugged at my lips. They won't steal what I've already marked as mine. My reflection in the dusty window was pale, resolute. I pressed my palm to the glass, feeling the chill of it seep into my skin, and whispered to the silence, "Never again." When I stepped back into the world of Moon Atelier, the air shifted around me, too bright, too polished, every surface gleaming with the promise of luxury that never truly belonged to those who created it. My breath was measured, my posture demure. I wore a simple dress of soft gray that clung to my waist and fell like liquid around my ankles. A deliberate choice, humble enough to be overlooked, elegant enough to be remembered. Seijin stood at the far end of the studio, his profile haloed by the diffused light of the tall windows. His smile was as precise as the cut of his tailored suit, a mask that had once fooled me into thinking it was kindness. He turned as I approached, the tilt of his head betraying the mild surprise that never reached his eyes. "Yuna!" he said, his voice rich and warm as if he were greeting a trusted friend. "Your ideas are always so charming?" I bowed low, the weight of that word, charming, pressing against my shoulders, my hands folded in front of me, steady despite the sharp sting in my chest. "I'm just happy to help," I replied softly, letting my words slip past my lips like silk, smooth and unassuming. My eyes, however, never left his face. They watched the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth, the brief flare of calculation that he thought I couldn't see. He reached out to take the folder I held, fingers brushing mine in a gesture that felt almost tender. My heart didn't flinch this time. I let the contact linger a beat longer than was proper. Let the air between us thrum with the silent knowledge that I was no longer the girl who had once needed his approval. Inside that folder, decoy sketches waited. Silhouettes that mimicked the real designs. Details he would recognize as mine, but couldn't claim as his. My real work lay safe, registered and sealed behind walls he couldn't breach. As he flipped through the pages, his brow furrowed in that familiar, thoughtful frown. My lips curled in a smile he didn't see. Let him think he's taking what matters. Let him think I'm still the girl who doesn't know her own worth. Seijin glanced up at me, his eyes warm and patronizing. Your attention to detail is impressive. We'll fold some of these into the spring line, perhaps, he mused, as though he were doing me a favor. His fingers drummed lightly against the folder, each tap a silent beat of ownership he thought was his to command. I let my shoulders relax, let my lips part in a soft, obedient smile. Of course, Seijin, I trust your vision. The words tasted like ashes, but I held them there, sweet and pliant because that was the face he expected. He doesn't know what I've already done. He doesn't know what I've taken back. His gaze lingered on my face a moment longer, searching for something. Weakness, doubt, perhaps even that old desperate hope I had once worn so openly. I gave him nothing. Only the polite smile of a girl too grateful to question her place. He turned away then, his focus already shifting to the next task, the next conquest. I watched the crisp lines of his shoulders, the careless grace in his step. My chest ached, but not from longing anymore, from the knowledge of what I had survived and what I would build from its ashes. I lingered in the quiet of the studio a moment longer, breathing in the scent of fresh fabric and the faint tang of iron from the machines. My hands folded neatly at my waist, trembled once, then stilled, the slight motion fading like a ripple in still water. My eyes found the cutting table, the neat rows of tools that had once felt like weapons in Seijin's hands. They would be weapons in mine now. Every bow, every smile, a quiet performance. Every heartbeat, a drum of war. As I stepped back toward the door, the light caught in the polished floor, and for a moment I saw the reflection of my own face. Calm, composed, unyielding. My name was mine, my work was mine, and this time, the world would not forget it. The click of my heels across the polished floor echoed softly in the studio's hush as I moved deeper into Moon Atelier's workroom. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows, gilding the air with a pale glow that seemed to wrap Seijin in an almost holy light as he hovered over a rack of newly drafted garments. His back was to me, broad shoulders clad in an ivory shirt that fit him like second skin, every movement fluid and precise. I paused for a moment, allowing the warmth of the morning to brush across my face, steadying the rush in my chest. My reflection ghosted across the glass of a nearby display case. A faint image of a girl who had been so easily dismissed in this very room. This time, I am here on my own terms. Seijin turned, his smile a practiced curve, eyes bright and calculating beneath the soft line of his lashes. He carried my sketches in his hands, the edges creased from his grip, as if he'd claimed them already. His gaze settled on my face with that familiar, patronizing warmth, the kind that had once felt like an invitation, but now felt like a performance. "Yuna," he said, his tone drenched in feigned fondness. "Your fresh takes never fail to surprise me. These lines, clean, elegant, almost too sophisticated for a newcomer." His fingers tapped against the edge of my sketches, the sound a soft percussion that carried a quiet, possessive rhythm. My breath caught, though I didn't let it show in my face. My lips curved faintly, controlled. Of course. That's why I'm here, right? To learn from someone? Experienced? His grin widened, pleased by my apparent humility. He turned away, running his fingertips down the seam of a half-finished jacket on a mannequin. A gesture so casual it almost hid the theft it masked. My eyes traced the curve of his wrist, the small flicker of satisfaction in his shoulders. He thought he was gathering something raw and unrefined, ready to be polished beneath his guiding hand. Let him think that. I watched as he laid my sketches across the drafting table, each page a testament to the dreams he'd thought he could claim. His hand smoothed the paper, eyes glinting with the excitement of new ideas. My chest ached at the familiarity of it, how he had once watched me with that same spark, only to cut the pieces of me that suited him and discard the rest. I stepped closer, the scent of iron and starch thick in the air, mingling with the warm, bright glow that pooled on the table. My fingers traced the edge of the design, one that had cost me sleep and blood, one that had lived in the back of my mind even as the world burned around me. Seijin's voice dropped to a murmur as he gestured to one of my adaptive seam lines, folding it into the shape of his own vision. "These could be so much more," he said softly, his tone rich with condescension. "If someone experienced handled them." The words slipped into the air like smoke, curling around my throat. I let them linger there, felt the weight of them press against the memory of flames, then let them slip away as easily as a breath. My lips parted in a smile, faint and sweet. "Of course. That's why I'm here, right?" My voice was calm, almost airy, though inside my pulse hammered against my ribs. I leaned forward slightly, my hair falling across my shoulder, soft and dark against the pale light. My eyes stayed locked on his face, every flicker of his expression captured in the quiet between us. He doesn't know what he's really holding. He doesn't know what he's already lost. In the glow of the overhead lights, I saw the glint of the micro QR codes woven into the fabric swatches I'd prepared. They shimmered like tiny constellations, each one a silent witness to his theft. I had registered every detail under my name, documented every sketch and sample. Each marker was mine, a signature he couldn't erase, no matter how carefully he wove my designs into his grand performance. He didn't notice the glint. His eyes were too busy measuring the angles of my lines, the delicate drape of the fabric that would soon bear his label. My lips twitched with amusement, though I forced them still before he could see. The air between us thrummed with something almost electric, my quiet defiance against his casual arrogance. As he turned back to his work, my gaze shifted to the other designers milling around the edges of the room. Their heads were bowed, voices low, the air filled with the quiet rustle of fabric and the soft scratch of pencils against paper. None of them looked up as Seijin folded my sketches into his own narrative. They had learned to keep their heads down. I had learned to keep mine up. The day passed in a blur of measured movements, Seijin's soft praise, the careful hum of the sewing machines, the low murmur of the atelier's lifeblood beneath it all. I watched, patient, every moment a quiet rehearsal for the real performance still to come. That night I left the studio with my heart pounding in my chest. The city's lights flickered across the rain-slicked pavement as I walked to the small coffee shop tucked into a quiet side street. The bell above the door chimed softly as I stepped inside, the warm scent of roasted beans wrapping around me like a comforting shawl. Hana was already there, her eyes bright and wary, fingers drumming against the ceramic mug in front of her. Jimin rolled up beside her, his eyes gleaming with quiet amusement as he caught my gaze. They had been voices in the margins for too long. Models, muses, and muscled shoulders turned into afterthoughts when the cameras turned away. We shared a soft laugh as I slid into the seat across from them, the light from the hanging lamps soft and golden around us. Hana's voice broke first, rough with something like relief. They don't see us, Yuna," she said, her tone sharp and sad all at once. "We're just props to them. Pretty scars they can show off for their campaigns." Her words settled over me like a second skin, each syllable a truth I had known all too well. My fingers curled around the mug, the heat grounding me, the bitterness of the coffee familiar and clean. Jimin leaned in, his grin crooked, eyes glinting with something bright. "Your designs, they don't hide us. They honor what's already there." I let the quiet between us stretch, let the weight of their faith settle in the hollow places Seijin had once carved out of me. My lips curved in a smile that reached all the way to my eyes. "Not in my designs," I said, my voice low and certain. "Not anymore." The door swung open then, the cold night air rushing in and carrying with it the distant echo of the city beyond. I looked out at the lights, felt the pulse of the night beneath my skin. My breath slowed, my heart steadied. I am not designing alone anymore. The words thrummed through me like a promise as I met Jimin's steady gaze. "They'll see us," I whispered. "They'll see every story written in the seams." And in the soft lamplight of that small cafe, I let my shoulders relax. I let the quiet strength in their laughter, their scars, wrap around me like armor. Tomorrow, I would return to Moon Atelier with the same calm smile and the same gentle nods. Tomorrow, I would watch Sajin's fingers skim across my lines and think he owned them. But tonight, I sat with the only truth that mattered. That the world was already shifting, that my name was waiting to be spoken, and I would make sure it was never forgotten. The laughter of Hana and Jimin still echoed softly in my mind as I walked back through the empty streets, the city lights reflecting in puddles like fragments of a brighter world I hadn't yet claimed. My breath fogged in the cool night air, each exhale a silent promise that trembled against the quiet. When I reached my apartment, the weight of the day settled across my shoulders in the hush of the empty hallway. I turned the key, the familiar squeak of the door like a whispered greeting I had grown used to. The air inside was thick with the faint scent of coffee and worn cotton, a comfort that pressed against the fragile ache building in my chest. I set my bag down gently, fingers lingering on the worn strap before letting it slip away. My small table was cluttered with scraps of fabric and a half-finished sketch, the soft glow of the single lamp flickering across the pages. I sank into the chair, the worn cushion pressing against my back like an embrace I didn't know I needed. The mood board sat propped against the wall, its edges curling like paper memories, its images bright and defiant even in the muted light. The headlines were already flooding the internet, Sejin's name shimmering across glossy previews that praised the innovation of his latest collection. Models twisted and twirled in shapes I knew better than my own reflection. My designs, stripped of soul, painted in the colors of his ambition. The words were sharp, bright, visionary, groundbreaking, inclusive. My fingers hovered over the screen, the glow of it painting my skin in harsh white light that felt like a verdict. They see the shine, not the hands that built it. I drew in a breath, slow and measured, but it caught in my throat as the images blurred and bled together. My hands trembled as I reached for the mood board, fingertips tracing the lines he'd once called overcomplicated, the strokes of charcoal that had been my heartbeat on paper. I pressed it to my chest, the edge of it digging into my collarbone as if to remind me of its weight. My lips parted in a silent plea to the empty room. What if they only see beauty, not the hands that built it? The words slipped out, soft and fractured, the echo of them hanging in the air like a question I didn't know how to answer. The silence that followed was too heavy, too complete. My breath shuddered and I let my head fall forward, hair slipping across my face as tears gathered, unbidden and hot against my skin. My shoulders shook with the force of it, quiet, careful sobs that seemed to crack open something in my chest. The tears fell onto the board, leaving small, glistening marks that blurred the images, like memories half erased. I remember the night I first sketched these shapes, the fever in my blood, the way the pencil seemed to dance across the page, capturing every breath of hope I'd ever known. I remember the fire that took it all away. I lifted my head slowly, breath catching in the half-light. My eyes were swollen, my cheeks flushed, and for a moment I didn't recognize the face staring back at me in the cracked mirror across the room. My lips were parted, my eyes wide with something like terror, something like defiance. I raised a hand, fingers brushing across the reflection, tracing the faint lines of worry and the hard edge of resolve that had taken root in my expression. The phone buzzed, cutting through the hush with a soft vibration that felt almost tender. I fumbled for it, pressing it to my ear with a breathless, unsteady sigh. "Yuna?" Jimin's voice came through, calm and warm despite the crackle of the line. His tone wrapped around me, an anchor against the storm in my chest. "I saw the previews. They're impressive, aren't they?" A humorless laugh slipped from my lips, the sound raw and ragged. "They're beautiful," I admitted, voice low and bitter. "And they're mine, Jimin, every line, every seam, mine." He was silent for a moment, the weight of that truth pressing against us across the miles of darkness. Then his voice returned, steady as stone. "Then let them see your hands," he said quietly. "Let them see you." I closed my eyes, tears drying on my cheeks in the hush of his certainty. My fingers tightened around the edge of the mood board, the paper creaking beneath the force of my grip. My breath steadied, each inhale a small act of defiance. "I know what it's like to burn," I whispered, voice a quiet prayer to the darkness. "I won't vanish in the smoke." I rose from the chair, the legs scraping softly against the floor as I crossed to the mirror. My reflection watched me, eyes bright, jaw set, hair falling across my shoulders in soft waves. I reached up, smoothing it back with slow, deliberate movements, every gesture a reclamation. My lips curved, a small, dangerous smile that felt like armor. "This time," I said softly, the words tasting of steel and hope. "They will see me." The glow of the headlines was still there, casting harsh shadows across the floor. I stepped away from them, turned off the screen with a flick of my wrist. The room plunged into the quiet hush of the night, the only light the gentle flicker of the lamp that made the mood board glow like a promise. My eyes traced the images there, the shapes that had been born from my hands, the vision that was mine alone. I pressed my fingertips to the edge of the board once more, feeling the pulse of it beneath my skin. The paper was soft and worn, the edges curling like a life I refused to let slip away again. My breath was steady now, the weight in my chest no longer a chain but a foundation. I am not afraid of the shadows. I have lived in them too long to fear their cold. I turned slowly, the quiet of the room a comfort, the weight of my resolve pressing against my spine like a promise. Outside, the city lights flickered in the distance, their glow faint but unyielding. My name was still silent on their lips, but it would not be forgotten. I moved to the window, fingers pressing against the cold glass as I watched the world beyond. My reflection shimmered there, layered over the lights of the city, a ghost and a promise all at once. My heart beat steady, a drum beneath my skin. I will not be erased again. As I turned back to the table, the mood board waiting, the light caught the edge of my tears, drying on my cheeks. A soft, shimmering line that felt like a quiet testament to everything I was still becoming. In that silent room, the weight of the world pressing against the fragile hush, I let the last of my fear slip away. I was ready, and this time they would see me. Not as an afterthought, not as a shadow, but as the name behind the beauty they could not claim. The air felt electric as I stepped into the grand hall of the Seoul Global Fashion Gala, the heavy hush of the night before settling into a quiet storm beneath my ribs. My fingers slipped around the small clutch in my hand, the edge of it cool against my skin, grounding me in the roar of cameras and the low hum of voices that filled the vaulted ceilings. Soft golden light spilled from crystal chandeliers, bathing the room in a glow that was almost too perfect, too deliberate. My eyes traced the arch of the ceiling, the slow swirl of silk and tulle that swept across the marble floors. The stage at the center of it all rose like a promise, one I had once thought belonged to Sejin alone. My breath slowed as I stepped deeper into the room, each inhale measured, deliberate. My heart beat in the hollow of my throat, the pulse of it a quiet drum beneath the heavy air. I let my gaze sweep across the rows of seats, the soft sheen of luxury pressed into every detail, gold-trimmed programs, the faint perfume of rare flowers that hung like a hush in the air. This is the stage he chose to steal from me. Asajian stood at the edge of the runway, his posture casual, almost lazy in its elegance. His crisp suit shimmered in the low light, every line of it tailored to perfection. He smiled easily, his eyes soft and warm as he greeted the influencers and reporters with practiced charm, his hands folding around theirs with a gentleness that felt carefully rehearsed. I lingered in the shadows at the edge of the room, my back straight, my head high. My dress was a simple black slip of silk that hugged my frame in a quiet, unassuming way. My hair was pulled back in a loose knot at the nape of my neck, the lines of my face bare beneath the soft glow of the chandeliers. Taijin's voice carried over the hush of the crowd, low and smooth, the words rolling off his tongue like honey. "Thank you all for coming," he said, his smile widening as he held their gaze. "Tonight, we unveil something truly special, an inclusive collection that redefines beauty for every body." My lips twitched faintly, though the smile didn't quite reach my eyes. Inclusive. As if the word was his to claim. The music swelled, soft and lush, as the first model stepped onto the runway. My breath caught in my chest, eyes tracing the shape of the gown as it moved beneath the lights, a silhouette I knew better than my own reflection. The adaptive seam lines curved across the fabric like whispers of possibility, every hidden pocket and adjustable panel a quiet testament to hands that had once sketched them in the dark. The cameras flashed, their harsh white light painting the air in staccato bursts. My heart quickened, a soft ache beneath my ribs as I watched the models glide down the runway in shapes I had once thought would carry my name. Their movements were liquid, each step a soft exclamation that echoed in the hush of the room. Sejin stood at the edge of the stage, his smile unwavering as the applause swelled around him. His eyes flicked across the crowd, catching the gaze of every influencer and editor with a warmth that was too perfect, too complete. My fingers tightened around the clutch, the leather soft beneath my grip. He thinks he's already won. I let my gaze drift to the subtle glint of the QR markers hidden in the folds of the garments. They shimmered beneath the stage lights like tiny veins of truth, invisible to those who didn't know where to look. My lips curved into a small, secret smile, a promise to myself. The next model stepped onto the runway, the fabric of her gown shifting like water around her legs. My breath caught again, the line of the dress so familiar it felt like a ghost. Each pleat and drape a memory of late nights hunched over sketches, of whispered dreams that had once felt too fragile to speak aloud. The crowd leaned forward, the soft murmur of admiration, a low tide that ebbed and flowed beneath the music. I could see it in their eyes, the awe, the hunger to name what they saw. They see the beauty, now let them see the truth. A hush fell over the room as Saichin stepped forward, his voice smooth and low. "This collection," he said softly, "is a testament to what can be created when we listen, when we see beyond the surface and embrace the stories hidden in every seam." The words tasted bitter on my tongue, though I let them settle in the hush that followed. My fingers traced the curve of the clutch, the metal clasp cold and sure beneath my touch. A faint ping echoed from somewhere near the stage, a soft, almost imperceptible note that cut through the hush like a blade. Sejin's eyes flickered, the smile faltering for the briefest moment as he shifted his weight, his fingers drumming lightly against his thigh. I watched the reporters exchange glances, their eyes narrowing as they checked their phones, the glow of screens flickering in the dim light. A soft murmur rippled through the crowd, a question unspoken, an answer clawing its way to the surface. They're seeing it now. A reporter stepped forward, her brow furrowed, voice low and curious. "These seem familiar," she said, the words careful and sharp all at once. "Who's credited on the designs?" Sejin's laugh was soft, almost playful, though the tightness in his shoulders betrayed the crack beneath the surface. "It's a team effort, of course," he said, his tone warm and rehearsed. His hand moved to adjust his cuff, the gesture almost too smooth. My lips curved into a small smile, a quiet exhale of triumph that settled in the hollow of my throat. A team, with one name they can't erase. The air shifted, a subtle flicker of unease that spread like ripples across the glossy floor. The music played on, the models still gliding, but the spell had been broken. Eyes turning back to Saijin with questions he couldn't answer, truths he couldn't bury. The light caught the glint of the QR markers in the next gown, the shimmer of them like constellations only I could see. My heart beat steady, calm in the chaos that had begun to unravel around him. Sejin's gaze flickered to me then, a fleeting glance that was all edges and shadows. I met his eyes across the room, let him see the quiet certainty there, the promise that I was no longer the girl who would bow her head and stay silent. "You thought you could erase me. You thought you could wear my name like a second skin. But I am here. And this time, they will see me." The music reached its crescendo as the final model stepped onto the runway, the lights flaring bright and the hush of the room shivering into something electric. My breath slowed, the edge of my smile steady as I let the truth settle in the bones of the hall. I didn't need to speak. The world was already beginning to whisper for me. The warmth of the warehouse enveloped me as I stepped through the heavy doors, the air scented with sawdust and the faint tang of old paint. Light pooled in soft, golden puddles across the worn wooden floors, every shadow stretched long and gentle, like the quiet promise of a dawn I'd waited too long to see. My breath caught in my chest as I took it in, the rough walls draped in swaths of raw linen, the low hum of laughter that rose and fell like a heartbeat beneath the vaulted ceiling. It was nothing like the sterile perfection of the gala, and that was why it felt like home. Hana stood near the far end of the room, the burn-scarred silk of her dress catching the light in ripples that shimmered like water. Her smile was bright, unguarded in a way that made my heart ache with something like relief. She turned as she saw me, her hands smoothing the skirt around her hips, the lines of her shoulders proud and sure. Jimin moved past her, his wheels gliding over the old floorboards with a soft whisper, the metallic threads of his jacket winking in the warm glow. His eyes found mine, the curve of his mouth lifting in a grin that held no pity, no apology, only quiet triumph. My breath stuttered in my throat at the sight of him, every movement a testament to the strength I had once designed for, but never truly seen until now. I stepped deeper into the space, the soft hum of voices washing over me like a balm. Faces turned to me, eyes wide and bright, laughter caught in the corners of mouths that had once learned to stay silent. My fingers curled around the edge of the clipboard I still held, the weight of it grounding me in the tremor of this new beginning. This is the layer skin I always dreamed of. This is what it was meant to be. The models gathered near the small stage we had built, the wooden planks stained with the years of work that had once been done in secret. They shifted, fidgeting in the warmth of the light, each one clad in pieces that breathed with them, no longer hidden, no longer forced into shapes that denied their truth. My eyes traced every curve, every seam, the soft shimmer of the adaptive fabrics that moved like a second skin against the lines of their bodies. I let my breath slow, let the weight of the moment settle across my shoulders like a cloak woven from every sleepless night, every whispered doubt. My lips parted around a breath that felt like a prayer. My hands trembled as I reached out to brush the edge of Hana's sleeve, the silk warm beneath my fingertips. She turned to me, her eyes bright with something that shivered between laughter and tears. "This isn't just fabric," she said, her voice strong enough to echo across the hush of the room. "It's armor for us." The words settled in my chest like an anchor, heavy and solid in a way that made the air feel cleaner, the light brighter. My heart thudded against my ribs, the echo of it steady and sure as I met her gaze. Ji-min rolled forward, his jacket catching the light like the glint of a blade, his grin turning mischievous. "Your designs don't hide us," he said, his voice warm and low, every word carefully chosen. "They show who we are." I swallowed hard, my eyes stinging with the weight of everything this moment held. My throat worked around the words that rose like a tide in my chest. "This is for you," I said softly, my voice trembling but unbroken. "For us. This is the truth." The music started softly, a single piano note that swelled and fell like the hush of breath in the darkness. The first model stepped forward, her movements slow and deliberate, every line of her body framed in the warm glow. Her prosthetic limb gleamed beneath the soft folds of the skirt, the edge of it catching the light like a quiet defiance. The room fell silent as she moved, every step a reclamation, every breath a testament. I watched from the edge of the small runway, my pulse thrumming in time with the music, every inhale a fragile promise that felt too big for my chest. My fingers tightened around the clipboard, the edges of it digging into my palm in a way that grounded me in the moment, the quiet chaos of it all. The next model stepped forward, the scars across her shoulders catching the light in faint, glimmering trails that looked almost like constellations. She moved with a grace that defied every expectation, every whispered dismissal. My breath caught in my throat as she turned at the end of the runway, her eyes finding mine in the hush. "This is why I fought. This is what I wanted the world to see." The room wasn't filled with reporters or the blinding white light of cameras, but every face in the crowd was lit with something that felt like wonder, something that felt like belief. I let that sink into the hollow of my chest, the tremor of it warming me from the inside out. Jimin wheeled forward to the edge of the runway, his laughter soft as he caught my eye. "Look at them, Yuna," he said, his voice rough with quiet pride. "They're seeing us. They're seeing you." My lips curved, the edges of the smile soft and trembling. "They're seeing the truth," I murmured, the words catching in my throat. "They're seeing what was always here." The final model stepped onto the runway, her burn-scarred arms bare beneath the soft drape of the dress. She paused at the edge, her chin lifted, her breath steady. The light caught the edges of her scars, turning them into rivers of gold. My heart ached with the beauty of it, the raw, unfiltered grace that was hers alone. The music reached its quiet crescendo, and in that breathless moment, the world seemed to still. Every flicker of the light, every sigh of breath caught in the hush. I let my gaze sweep across the room, the faces that turned to me with something like reverence, something like belonging. The final notes of the piano faded, leaving only the soft echo of breath and the quiet hum of the lights. My chest rose and fell, the weight of it a promise I could finally hold. In the hush that followed, I stepped forward, my head high, my eyes clear. My voice rose, strong and sure against the silence. "This is Lair's skin," I said, each word a quiet vow, and this time, it carries every voice it was born from. As the applause rose, soft and then swelling, I let my hands fall to my sides, the clipboard slipping away as the light washed over me. My tears slipped free, a quiet shimmer that caught in the warmth of the warehouse. In that golden light, there was no need for spotlights, no need for borrowed names. There was only the quiet certainty of creation, the pulse of truth that lived in every seam and every breath. And in that moment, I knew I had reclaimed what was mine. The boardroom smelled of leather and varnish, the walls paneled in deep mahogany that gleamed dully beneath the low, cold light of the overhead lamps. The long table stretched before me like a stage, every polished inch a silent testament to the power that had once rested in Seijin's hands. My fingers curled around the edge of the smooth surface, my touch deliberate, measured. I could feel the weight of every breath in the room, the quiet that pressed in around us like a closing door. Seijin sat across from me, his posture stiff, his fingers drumming in uneven rhythm against the arm of his chair. His eyes met mine, the polite smile he wore in the showroom gone now, replaced by something raw, something almost pleading. My chest rose and fell in the hush, the beat of my heart steady beneath the silk of my blouse. My name was a quiet drum in my blood, a promise I carried with me into this room. The morning light streamed through the tall windows at my back, washing me in a pale glow that felt almost sacred. Beyond the glass, the city stirred to life, the soft gold of dawn rising over the skyline. The shadows fell across Saijin's face, painting him in half-light, half-darkness, a portrait of a man who had built his empire on illusions. I let the silence stretch, let it settle in the spaces between us until it became almost heavy. My voice, when it came, was low and calm, each word a blade honed to an edge I had forged in fire. "Let's not waste time," I said softly, my tone measured and cold. "You know why I'm here." Sajin's lips parted around a breath that felt like a confession. His eyes darted to the men and women seated along the edges of the table, the executives who had once offered him quiet complicity in exchange for profit. Their gazes were lowered now, shame painting their expressions in shades of discomfort. My pulse quickened at the sight, though I kept my face smooth, unyielding. He cleared his throat, his fingers twisting the edge of his cuff in a gesture that was almost vulnerable. "Yuna," he said, his voice softer than I had ever heard it, the edges of it ragged. "Let's settle. We can share credit. Your name alongside mine, a partnership that honors what you've built." My lips curved in a smile that held no warmth. I leaned forward slightly, the light catching in my eyes, turning them into something cold and bright. "You didn't just steal a design," I said, my voice low and steady, every syllable a truth he could not escape. "You tried to silence the people it was meant for. You wore my work like a second skin and let the world believe it was yours." He flinched, his shoulders tensing as the words settled over him. I watched the flicker of desperation in his eyes, the tremor in the line of his mouth as he struggled to find the right defense. His hands stilled against the table, fingers splaying wide as if to catch the fragments of the power slipping through them. "I didn't mean to," he began, his voice tight, the words cracking under the weight of their own emptiness. I cut him off with a soft shake of my head, my tone calm, final. "Intent doesn't erase harm," I said, each word slow, deliberate. "You erased us, now I erase you." The silence that followed was absolute, the weight of it pressing against my ribs like a vice. My breath was steady, my hands folded in front of me with a stillness that felt almost ceremonial. Across the table, Seijin's face was pale, the lines around his mouth deepening as he looked away from me, his gaze dropping to the polished surface that reflected his own defeat. The executives shifted in their seats, the hush of fabric and the faint creak of leather loud in the quiet. Their eyes met mine, some wide with discomfort, others with something that looked almost like relief. They had seen the truth now, etched in the lines of my designs, whispered in the seams of every garment that had walked the runway in my name. I let the silence stretch a moment longer, the weight of it a final judgment that needed no words. Then I leaned back slightly, my voice soft but unyielding. "I'm buying Moon Atelier," I said, my tone almost conversational. "Every name, every thread, every shadow you used to hide the truth, it's mine now." Seijin's breath caught, his eyes snapping up to meet mine with something like disbelief. His lips parted, though he said nothing, the words dying in his throat before they could form. I watched the flicker of realization settle in his gaze, the quiet shudder of a man who had built his empire on borrowed names and stolen visions. "This isn't about revenge," I said quietly, my voice measured, calm. "It's about ending the cycle, about making sure no one else has to fight this battle again." My fingers traced the edge of the table, the cool wood smooth beneath my touch. "I'm not here to wear your name like a trophy. I'm here to bury it." The light shifted outside the windows, the soft glow of the morning brightening as the sun rose higher. My reflection shimmered in the glass, a faint echo of the woman I had once been. Small, overlooked, her voice a whisper, lost beneath the roar of Seijin's ambition. I let that memory settle for a moment, then let it go. Across from me, Saijin slumped in his chair, the last of the false confidence slipping from his shoulders. His fingers drummed once more against the wood, a nervous tick he couldn't hide. "Yuna," he said softly, his tone almost pleading. "Please. There must be another way." My lips curved faintly, though the smile didn't reach my eyes. "There was another way," I said, my voice quiet, resolute. "You chose this." The words settled between us like a final breath, the end of a story he had tried to write in my name. My chest rose and fell, the beat of my heart slow and steady, a quiet triumph that needed no applause. As I stood, the chair scraped softly against the floor, the sound sharp in the hush of the room. The light from the windows washed over me, the warmth of it a quiet promise against the cold veneer of the boardroom. Sajin's face was in shadow, every line of him etched in the half-light that had once hidden his deceit. I turned to the door, my footsteps slow and deliberate, every movement measured and sure. I didn't look back as I reached for the handle, the weight of the world shifting in the quiet between heartbeats. My breath was calm, my head high. The dawn was waiting beyond the glass, the promise of a new day glinting in the soft gold light. My name was a whisper in the air, a truth that would not be silenced. This time, they will remember who I am. The light streamed through the tall windows of the new studio, soft and golden, catching in the folds of fabric draped across the tables. It filled every corner of the room with warmth, brushing the worn wooden floors with a gentle glow that felt like a quiet blessing. My breath slowed as I stepped inside, the scent of fresh linen and warm cotton mingling with the faint tang of chalk dust and thread. Hana stood at a work table near the window, the burn-scarred silk of her sleeve shifting as she adjusted a mannequin's drape. Her fingers moved with surety, her brow furrowed in concentration, the quiet grace of her movements a soft testament to the strength that had carried her here. The light caught the curve of her cheek, the small, contented smile that tugged at the corner of her mouth. Jimin sketched at another table, his pencil moving in steady, confident lines across the thick cream paper. His wheelchair was pulled close, the wheels worn from the hours he had spent here, tracing out new visions beneath the hush of quiet music that played low from a small speaker on the shelf. His laughter rose in a soft, unguarded bubble as he caught my eye, a spark of mischief in the lift of his brows. My fingers traced the edge of the door frame, the grain of the wood smooth beneath my palm, my heart beat slow and steady, each pulse a quiet echo of everything we had reclaimed. I let my gaze drift across the room, The piles of scrap fabric, the neat rows of pins and chalk, the faint hum of conversation that drifted like music in the warm air. Every breath felt full, rich with the scent of possibility. This is the future I had once thought was lost. A small voice broke through the hush, hesitant and soft. "Miss Yuna, I'm not sure if it's enough yet." I turned to see the intern standing near the corner table, her fingers tangled in the folds of a half-finished dress, her shoulders tense with uncertainty. Her gaze darted to me, wide and anxious, the words trembling on her lips. I moved closer, the soft scrape of my heels against the floor a whisper in the gentle light. I paused beside her, my fingers brushing the fabric she held. The stitches were uneven, the lines of the seam not yet true, but there was a beauty in the imperfection, a promise in the work she had done with her own hands. I lifted my gaze to her face, the flush in her cheeks, the shine of worry in her eyes. My voice was soft as I reached out, laying my hand gently on her shoulder. "Show me," I said, the words a quiet invitation. My lips curved in a small, warm smile. "That's what we're here for, to make it enough. And this time, your name will stand with mine." Her breath caught, her lips parting around a quiet exhale. She nodded, her shoulders relaxing beneath my touch, the tension slipping away like a weight she no longer had to carry alone. I let my hand fall away, stepping back to give her space, my heart swelling with a quiet pride that felt like light in my chest. The room was alive with small sounds. The soft scrape of pencils, the rustle of fabric, the low murmur of voices sharing ideas in the gentle hush of the morning. I let it settle around me, the rhythm of it a balm to the ache that had lived in my bones for so long. I turned to the wall where fresh sketches were pinned, the paper bright against the worn boards. Each drawing carried a name, small, careful letters in the corner, a signature that claimed every line, every shape. My breath caught as my fingers traced them one by one, each name a testament to the voices that had been silenced too long. At the center, my final design hung in quiet triumph. The label beneath it read, "Designed by Bae Yuna, Layer Skin." The words were simple, unadorned, but they shone in the warm light, a promise that would not be stolen again. I closed my eyes, letting the soft rustle of fabric fill my senses. My breath was steady, my heart full. The weight of the past fell away in that quiet moment, replaced by the certainty of what we had built together, what we would keep building, stitch by careful stitch. In this place, credit was sacred. Every hand that touched the fabric would be honored, every voice heard in the whisper of thread and the slow bloom of color. I turned as Jimin rolled closer, his pencil still tucked behind his ear, a faint smudge of graphite across his knuckles. "It's different here, Yuna," he said, his voice low and sure. "It feels honest." My lips curved in a smile that reached all the way to my eyes. "It is," I said softly, the words a quiet confession. "It's ours." Hana joined us, her fingers brushing the edge of Jimin's sketch as she leaned in to look. Her smile was soft, her eyes bright in the warm light. "You gave us something we never thought we'd have," she said, her voice a quiet benediction. "A place where our scars are seen, where they're part of the beauty not hidden away." My breath caught, my throat tight with the quiet wonder of it. "We gave it to each other," I said, my voice thick with the weight of the truth. "That's what makes it real." The intern turned then, holding up the dress she had been working on. Her hands were still, her gaze steady. "Can we finish this together?" she asked softly, her voice stronger now, the tremor gone. I stepped forward, my hands brushing the fabric, feeling the pulse of her work beneath my fingertips. "Of course," I said, my tone warm. "Sure. Let's make it enough, let's make it ours." The light shifted in the windows as the sun climbed higher, flooding the studio in a glow that felt like promise. The air was rich with the scent of fresh fabric, the quiet murmur of laughter and the gentle hum of possibility that lived in every corner of this place we had claimed as our own. I closed my eyes once more, breathing in the warmth, the gentle weight of the future that stretched out before us. In that final moment, every breath was a vow, every heartbeat a testament. We had taken back our names, we had built something new, and in the soft hush of the studio, bathed in golden light, I let the last of the fear slip away. This is the truth, this is the legacy, this is Layer Skin. If Yuna's story resonated with you, share this video with someone who needs to know that their voice matters. Subscribe to see more stories of quiet triumphs and fierce reclamations, and remember, your name deserves to be heard.